I'm Maggie Schneider, and this is the Slow Living Era podcast, a podcast about starting over, slowing down, and building a life that fits you through motherhood, big moves, and everything in between. Let's jump into today's episode. Welcome back to the podcast. Building a new home comes with a unique set of challenges compared to buying a home that has already been built and lived in, and I've been getting a lot of questions about the process, how we decided on a builder, a location, etc. So I want this to be a really helpful episode for those of you considering working with a builder for your new home. So quick disclaimer, I am definitely not a realtor, I'm not a contractor, home builder, anything like that. So this episode is purely based on our experience building a home in Florida, especially from afar in Maryland, not being able to check in on the progress. And then things that I either learned along the way, wish I had known sooner, or double checked throughout the process. So I'm just going to share a little bit about our decision-making process and what made us decide to build versus buy a resale home and some of the other considerations along the way. So first of all, when we were first starting to look at homes in Florida, it was really just for fun. We went for Thanksgiving in 2025, and my in-laws were just like, "Hey, go check out the area, go look at some houses, see what you think, see what options there are." So we looked at one resale home. We had several on our list to look at, but when we looked at the resale home, we were very unimpressed. It was very much lived in. It needed, even though the pictures looked great on the listing, it needed some work. Like, it needed new carpet. Kids had lived there, so it was just marks on the wall, little dings and stuff like that. Nothing major. But when we saw what we could get with a new build, it was actually more affordable, at least in Florida, to buy a new build home versus a resale home. Now, with the new build home, they do not put a pool in. I know Floridians love their pools in their backyards. Nearly every house on the market, it seems like, for a resale has pools in their backyard. So that is one thing that we sacrificed with choosing to use a new build or to buy a new build versus a resale home. But we were willing to forego that to just have a brand new home. The other thing was, when we spoke with the realtor who gave us tours of some of the houses, is that the interest rates for mortgages on a new home, you were able to, those were a little bit more flexible than buying a resale home. So we are very spoiled here in Maryland. We bought our house in 2020, so our interest rate is like 2.8 or something crazy like that. Like, it is so good. It was so hard to walk away from that interest rate. With the way that the economy is right now. So our interest rate on the new home will be a little bit more than 6. I can't remember the exact number, maybe 6.3, something like that. And that's because we bought down the rate a little bit. So we had some flex cash, which is basically an incentive that the builders use to get you to sign. So originally they had, we bought the house we decided on the house at the end of January, and they originally gave us $20,000 in flex cash that we could use towards some upgrades, some add-ons to the house, which we did use for some of those, or we could use it to buy down the rate. So once we actually decided to buy the house, we were able to get $30,000 in flex cash. And some builders might call it something different, but we decided that we were going to buy down the rate a little bit, so it bought us like a point, or I don't know exactly the terminology, but like 0.1% or 0.2%, which seems like not a big deal, but when you're buying a $500,000 house, that adds up quickly. So that was one of the big reasons that we decided on a new build, is it just seemed more affordable, not to mention just like the perks of you get a brand new house that nobody has lived in. That's one thing. The other great thing about a new build is that they typically give you some sort of warranty within a year. Sometimes you can extend it to 2 years. They will come back and like fix anything that breaks or that you see is wrong, any dings in the house. For example, my neighbor told me that she had noticed a scratch on one of the mirrors in the bathrooms like a couple of months after moving in, and she was able to just quickly call them. They're still doing construction in the neighborhood, so it was very quick that they came over like the next day or something and swapped out the mirror. So that's another great thing, is that you don't have to worry as much about some of the maintenance of a new build house, obviously because it's new, but also because you have that warranty in place where if something does break or go wrong, you're able to like call the construction company and they will contract out with the subcontractors to come and fix whatever it is wrong. So obviously less immediate maintenance on a new home. You get that warranty. The layouts are also, they tend to be better on newer homes. So when we toured, we probably toured 5 or 6 new, maybe even more than that, less than 10 though, new home layouts. And what was great about those is that the floor plan was very open from the kitchen to like the living dining area. For most of the layouts that we saw, they were very open, and that is something that we really like. We have that in our current house. Our current house is, or our house I should say, that's not our house anymore, but our house in Maryland did have an open floor plan. It was a townhouse, so it was a little bit more elongated than like a single family house would be. So still not an ideal layout, but we really liked having that open sight line from the kitchen to the playroom to the living room. You know, we could see all areas of that main floor. So we really liked that, and not all of the resale houses that we saw had that. And then since we are living close to the beach, the kind of safety of the house was big for us. So all of the new construction homes obviously are built for hurricanes. They have special windows, special siding, whatever that is safer in a hurricane. So that was very appealing to us. We actually didn't get a cement or concrete house, which I know is really big in Florida too, in those hurricane areas. So that's one thing we didn't get with this builder. A lot of the builders did have that, but we still felt like, okay, the construction on this house is going to be solid because it is new, it is modern, they have the latest technology, all of that, and it's more energy efficient. So brand new windows, of course, brand new appliances. We actually got to get rid of our air fryer because the oven that we have has an air fryer built in. So just like little things like that were nice perks. And we felt like the transition from moving out of state was better with a new construction home because we knew that the timeline would be a little bit longer. So if you buy a resale home and you're living, across the country and you plan to move to Florida, you kind of have to jump on those resale homes a little bit quicker because, they want to sell them now as soon as possible for the most part. Maybe you can negotiate a month or two rent back, but for the most part, there's a lot less flexibility with the timing of your move. For us, we were pretty flexible on the move. We wanted to ideally move in the summer just to avoid disrupting our kids' routines in school and everything like that. And I think most parents would feel the same way. That's why the market tends to be the busiest in late spring, early summer, because that's when families want to move. So with a new construction home, we were able to plan it out a little bit better. We knew that the build would take, our builder told us 4 to 8 months. So that's a pretty big range still. But we knew that, okay, we put the deposit on our house at the end of January. We had at least 4 months to sell our house. So that gave us time to get our house ready, declutter, pack some things up, get it cleaned, all of that stuff before it went on the market. And plus, we didn't want to list our house in January here in Maryland because that's not the best time to sell a house. We wanted to push it later into spring. So we were able to do that. And we listed our house for sale in March, and it sold within 30 days. Yeah, which seems to be the timeline as of right now. It's about 30 to 45 days on the market here in Maryland. I think in Florida it's a little bit longer. So again, you might be able to negotiate some of those resale homes a little bit differently, but that's been our experience.
If you're in your own relocation era, or honestly just trying to make your home function better with kids, I'm right there with you. I've been gathering all my favorite finds into one place. Everything from moving essentials to home stuff to kid-related things and activities that actually make life easier. I'll link my Amazon storefront in the show notes. When you use my link, I get a small commission at no cost to you, so thank you for supporting my small business. Back to the show.
And then, of course, the other reason to choose new construction is that you can personalize some things depending on your builder. So our home was not custom. You can work with custom builders. That is a very different process. But we went with a company that was building out an entire neighborhood. So our house is semi-custom, I would say. They had kind of 2 options that you could choose from. One was more affordable than the other. Our house that we chose based on the lot, really, was already spec'd. So that means that they had already chosen the finishes that were going to be in that house because they were going to start building it whether we bought it or not. They wanted to start building it so that they had inventory for people who did need a shorter timeline to move in. But the biggest deciding factor for us was choosing the lot because we didn't want a tiny no yard lot. There were some lots in the neighborhood that had tiny lots, and that's because, older folks, after I talked to the sales guy, this is what he told me, that some older folks or just people don't want that yard maintenance to deal with. I have young kids, so a yard was really important to me, and we come from a townhouse where our backyard is 100 square feet or something. So we really wanted at least some yard that the kids could run around and play in, and we could kind of keep an eye on them. And so that's what made us decide on the lot that we chose. We also did not want to back up to water. We almost picked a lot that did that because it was one of the bigger lots that they had. But at the end of the day, we just thought it would be safer for the kids. We didn't want to have to worry about putting up a fence right away so that they wouldn't go in the water. Obviously, there are gators in Florida, so we wanted to avoid those as much as possible. And then the bugs tend to be closer to water. So all of those factors we took into consideration when choosing our lot. Some things that would be helpful when choosing a builder. So we really based our choice on the price and the layout of the house that we wanted. We were obviously choosing it from Maryland, so I actually didn't see the layout of this house before we bought it. I was strictly going on what I saw online, and they had a 3D walkthrough of it that gave me a pretty good idea of what the house was going to feel like. But if you are buying a house from afar, you might have a few other things that you want to take into consideration when choosing a builder. So the layout was probably the most important for me, and the location of the neighborhood that they were building in. But some other things you should look at are obviously reviews. Sometimes they're hard to find. I think the company that we used had 2 or 3 Google reviews, and they weren't great. They were 3 or 4 stars out of 5. Kind of makes sense because it is an annoying process. There's a lot of back and forth in emails, a lot of not miscommunication, but just there's a lot of people involved. So you sometimes don't know who is in charge of what and who you need to talk to about what. That's been the most annoying part of the process, I will say. But even just going through the neighborhood, if there's homes already there being built, you can see if you can talk to some of the neighbors. I find that people in Florida are very friendly and open to that. So see if you can talk to some people, see what their experience with the process was. We did work really closely with another builder. We were kind of debating between 2 different houses by 2 different builders for a little bit, and we just didn't get answers very quickly from certain agents. So that responsiveness is very important too. You want people who are going to support you and answer your questions quickly, because it can be a longer process. Like I said, up to 4 to 8 months. So you want that to be a good experience. Now, I mentioned that we had 2 different options for the kind of upgrades or what was standard in the house that we bought. They had already spec'd our house, but we were able to add some things on. We ended up covering our porch, so we knew that we weren't going to build a pool right away, so we still wanted to have a little bit of protection on that porch, so we could sit outside and not be eaten alive by bugs or anything like that. Some other upgrades that you could add on were you could put a gas fireplace in the living room. We didn't feel like we needed that in Florida, even though I really wanted a fireplace because it just feels so cozy, especially around the holidays. I just didn't like the style that they did it in. They kind of had shiplap and things like that, and I just didn't love it, so we opted not to get that. We did add on the appliance package, which included the washer, dryer, and the refrigerator. We didn't get a choice on which appliances we could get with that package, but that just saved us the hassle of moving in and then trying to coordinate finding the fridge, getting the delivery set up, making sure that everything fit in the places that it needed to, all of that. So we just kind of wanted that off of our plates and not to think about it so that we could move right in and have a fridge and have laundry right away. The other things that were add-ons, we could have switched our tub to be a super shower, they called it. apparently that's like really big right now, is that everyone wants these huge showers. I really like having a tub. I take baths every once in a while, but I also like it for my kids to have like a big bathtub. So we ended up not opting in for that option. And then there was another option to have cabinets put in the laundry room. And again, I did really want cabinets. I plan on adding those pretty quickly once we move in, but I didn't like how they did it. Like the layout of it just didn't make sense for what I would have done. So we opted not to do that. Plus it was pretty pricey. It was like several $1,000s, and I was like, I know I can do that cheaper by just buying cabinets at Home Depot or Lowe's or IKEA, whatever, and installing them myself. Not that I've installed cabinets myself before, but we're gonna learn. It's all gonna be good. And then some other things to consider are about timeline and the expectations. So delays might happen. Luckily in Florida, the weather tends to be pretty good. Like if you're building a house in a colder state, you have to keep in mind that they may pause during the winter, during the holidays for, bad weather, freezing cold temperatures, snow, excessive rain, all of that. We did not have that problem as of right now, and actually our timeline is looking much there. It's going to be ready sooner than we expected. It's weird, we were initially told like October, November time frame, and then because we bought when we did, I guess they decided to like start building on that side of the neighborhood quicker, and so our house will be done definitely by the end of June, but actually when I visited, they said it will be done probably by the end of May. So hoping to close on our new house like mid-June. That was kind of our goal timeline, and it's looking like that's going to work out. So if you are building a new house, that's just something to keep in mind, is that have some realistic expectations around the timeline and know that that can change and evolve as the process goes on. Delivery delays, like things with the economy, anything like that can affect this. And then just keep in mind too that when you do tour these homes, you're usually looking at the model homes, which are like the best of the best. They have all of the upgrades, all of the features, the very nice trims, the nice flooring. So everything feels very polished. Obviously it's staged well with good furniture and a nice aesthetic, and things are painted differently. So just keep that in mind, that when your house arrives or is, finished being built, it's not going to look like the model home. Ask really practical questions when you go through that model home, like ask what is an add-on, what is an upgrade, and decide what you're willing to let go of to make it more affordable for you, and what is a must-have that you need to have on a new house. Some other things that you want to consider when choosing your lot too, because not only do you have to pick the floor plan of your house, but you have to pick the lot. So I mentioned what was important for us is we wanted a little bit of a yard and no water in the back, but privacy might be an issue for you. So ask the builders what homes are being built next to you, how close they're going to be, what windows are facing your house, where the porch is in relation to your neighbor's porch, all of those things. The way that our neighborhood is like there's kind of a cutout where the porch is, so it's pretty hidden from your neighbors, which is nice. So even though we're very close to them, they're maybe, I don't even know, 20, 30 feet away from our house. It's almost like a townhouse, but it still feels private because there's not like direct windows into our main areas, and they're not facing our patio. Another nice thing that we just kind of lucked out on is that we are facing east, so the sun is going to rise on our front porch and set on our back porch, which is kind of nice. That wasn't like intentional, but that's how our house is here in Maryland. Actually, we kind of face north in Maryland, so we can see the sun set over my master bedroom window, which is pretty nice. It's just like, you can see it over the mountains, and it's always like pretty. I know some people are not like big in sunsets and sunrises, but it's just like, it's a nice feature to have. If you're going to live somewhere and you want to enjoy the outside, it's something to think about. So think about which direction your house is facing, what kind of sun exposure you're going to have in your front yard versus your backyard. If you're a gardener, you want certain plants, that's something to think about. All these little details, it's a lot, and it's a big decision. We actually made a spreadsheet as we were going through this process to weigh out the pros and cons of each house, what everything was going to cost us, and what the features were for each house. Like if they had a 3-car garage versus a 2-car garage, or if they had 5 bedrooms versus 4, all of that. So all of that played a big role. The last thing that you want to consider is like the overall community and its features. So does it have an HOA or no HOA? Some people are very anti-HOA. I think in this phase of life, I like an HOA because I want them to upkeep some of the neighborhood so that it looks nice. It's good for resale. And then it also brings in families. Typically, families live in neighborhoods with HOAs, so that was important for us. We figured that more families with young kids would be in an HOA neighborhood versus not. That wasn't a make or break for us, but it was something that we considered. And then, of course, you want to think about the amenities that are in the community. So, does it have a pool? Does it have a tennis court? Does it have playgrounds? Anything that's important to you. Does it have sidewalks, street lights? Is the mailbox in front of your house, or do you have to go to the center or the community center to go get your mail? If those things are important to you, add it to your list, right? Of course, you want to think about beyond your immediate neighborhood, but other community factors like, is it close to schools that you want to use, close to grocery stores, shopping? Is it in a flood zone? Is there a lot of traffic in the area? Is it walkable to other shops and things if that's important to you? And then, of course, just like the overall vibe or aesthetic of the neighborhood, that might be important to you too. So at first, I mostly focused on the house itself, but then I realized that a lot of the neighborhood, the community, that is obviously going to impact my daily life so much. So all of these things are important to think about as well. I did have one moment of panic as the first time I walked into the house. I thought the floors were wrong, and I was not happy about it because again, I didn't have a say in which floors I was going to get because it was part of the package that they had already decided on for our particular house. But when I walked in, the floors looked very gray versus we were supposed to have a more warm-toned wood. And yeah, I was a little panicked. It was totally a false alarm, but it was kind of dark that day that I went in, and the floors are pretty similar at first glance. But luckily I went to the sales office. My sales agent that I worked with wasn't there, but another one was able to help me. He looked up my spec sheet for the house, and then we walked over to the house and he compared, he brought the gray flooring in and compared it to the flooring that was on the floor in our house. And it was we very quickly realized that, okay, it's not wrong. They did it right. If it was wrong, he was like, we would have fixed it or given you some money back or something like that. So it all would have been made okay. But just something to keep in mind is that if you're building from far away, have someone, if you can, check in on the house. Our builder and sales agents, they were sending us like picture updates every other week. But if there was something like specific that we had a question on, or we wanted to see, like, hey, is there an outlet outside on the patio, or is there, anything little like that, they should at least communicate with you and send you pictures and make sure that, you have what you want because you're paying for it, right? So that was one area that I panicked on. Really, it was just the lighting was bad, and seeing the two materials side by side was a big help. The other thing that as I went through the house the first time, I kind of thought of how I was able to better see like how I was going to update it and kind of make it our own. Obviously, builder grade is not the best, and you don't want your house to look like everyone else's. You want it to feel like home. So I ended up deciding like we're going to do custom closets in most of the closets. Actually, all the kids' bedrooms have walk-in closets, and then our walk-in closet in the master is huge. So I was like, the wire shelves are just going to look really stupid in here. And they're just they can't hold that much. Like it's not good for organization. So luckily the day before they were going to put the wire shelves in, we asked the builder not to install them in certain rooms and in the laundry room, because I knew I wanted cabinets in the laundry room. So they were super helpful, and they were like, yeah, no problem. We'll just put a marker on there so that the contractors know not to put the wire shelves in those areas, and it was totally fine. I did think about this situation too late, is that I wanted to put new mirrors. The builder grade mirrors tend to be like those huge mirrors that are just held on by clips and maybe some glue on the back. They're not the best looking. They work, right? But they're just not the best. So I did decide too late on that I didn't want mirrors in certain rooms, and I didn't tell them in time, and they had already hung them. So no big deal. I actually talked to my neighbor, and she had an issue with her mirror, and she said, that, they don't actually glue it on the back. It's just held by those clips. So if I do decide to take it down, it won't damage the walls too bad, which was good. So it's actually okay that they hung it, because that gives me time to find mirrors that I love, and I don't have to feel rushed about it. And then I can take the mirror down and use it somewhere else if I want. So maybe that big master bathroom mirror we could use in the garage for our little home gym. I think that would be a good idea. So just an idea that if there are certain things that you are really important to you in a house, make a list and give it to your builder early so that they know of any changes that you want to make. And it's definitely easier to ask them not to do something than to do something, but it's worth a shot. If there are certain things, like if you want a tree put in a different place than where they put it, it's worth a shot to ask them. There are certain rules and restrictions that they have with their permitting and everything that maybe make them not able to do that, but it is, if you have that list, give it to them as early as possible as you make those decisions. And I think walking through the house helped me be able to think of those things. So the sooner you can walk through the house, even once the walls are up, really, or when it feels like a real house. So the sooner you can walk through and ask them to make those changes, the better. So just to summarize this episode and give you a few quick key takeaways. Number one is, don't rush your decisions, because the process feels exciting, right? It's going to be a longer process. So make sure you take the time to think through it. Talk with your partner if you have one as you're buying the house. And don't be afraid to ask those annoying questions, because at the end of the day, it's your house. You're paying a lot of money for it. It should be what you want. And then think about how you live day to day and what is really important for you in terms of layout, in terms of features of the house. And that will help you kind of weigh the decision if you're comparing multiple homes. Some things are easier and cheaper to change later, so don't feel like you need to have all of those decisions made right away. But I think it's really easy to focus on making the house look beautiful, but try to focus just as much on making it functional for actual life, especially in terms of the layout and things that you cannot change later on. So again, this is just our experience so far. Hopefully hearing the thought process behind some of our decisions helps if you're considering a move or a new build yourself. If you have specific questions about the process, feel free to message me on Instagram. I've been getting a lot of DMs about it. Some of you are considering buying a new construction home, and I'm happy to help just give you information on what helped with our decision. But there's so much information out there, so many different builders to choose from. Just do your research. And if you're enjoying these episodes, make sure you're following the podcast. Send me a DM if you have any topic recommendations that you want for the future. I'm pretty much an open book about this process, and I want this to be super valuable for you, my audience. So thank you so much for being here, and we'll see you in the next episode.
For more resources, links from today's episode, or information about working with me, you can head to maggieslowliving.com. And as always, thank you for spending part of your day with me. I'll see you back here next week for another episode of the Slow Living Era podcast.